Hey, good try this again. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Meteorology Lab. You can see the clouds moving left to right here, indicating that we've got flow out of the south. So we've got the Gulf starting to open up, some tropical flow coming up from that direction. And let me set up the surface chart so you can kind of see what's going on there. This is just kind of a time lapse from about 2 hours ago, just showing a lot of stratocumulus and a bit of altocumulus in there. So you've got the chart ready, and there it is. You can see the flow up there on the Texas coast. 60s dew point starting to make its way onshore. Here's the 60-degree isodrosotherm, and that's pretty significant change from a couple days ago where we had 20s across much of Texas. So there's all the 60s right there, and then maybe the 50 line we can kind of draw it like that. This is painting some moisture starting to come northward. So it's moving up the Interstate 35 corridor, and up to the north we've got this front coming through the southern plains. So we're probably going to be looking at some rain here in this part of Texas, actually much of Texas, for tomorrow. Going on up to the north and to the west, we've got a bit of a plateau high over the western U.S. Temperatures at this hour from the 20s and 30s in the Great Basin area. So this is on the cool side, but it's not too severe there. But if we go further north, this is where we've got some very strong polar air starting to develop there. Pressures are starting to come up to about 1045 millibars up over the Arctic Ocean there. So we're gradually shifting into a pattern that's going to cool down in about probably 5 or 6 days from now. We'll really start to see things change. Okay, let's head to the regular charts and see what's going on. We'll start out with the thickness and pressure. And this is what it looks like at this hour here. So if we draw the fronts, there we go, just kind of a weak cold front extending from northern Illinois all the way down to West Texas there, and probably the tail end extending down into Arizona. And it appears that this is kind of a combination of polar air in this region here and some of this plateau air where we've had some pretty strong radiation out over the interior regions over the past few days. So they're kind of combining there and producing this massive cold air. And then the actual polar air looks like that's up to the north, somewhere up in this area here. And then of course we have the warm front side out in the Great Lakes area, and up over Quebec and Maine. This is some outgoing polar air over that region. So we're starting to develop a flow of tropical moisture up from the Gulf, and you can see the lines here on the Gulf Coast. At least 3 lines there indicating that we've got a pressure gradient coming in from the south. And it looks like the trajectory of this air is from probably around Cuba, maybe a bit of the Caribbean Sea there, and probably out to the Bahamas. So this is a little bit more of a southerly trajectory than what we've had over the past couple of days. And out over the Pacific there, looks like we got another system approaching the Oregon coast. There it is right there, and out over the bulk of the Pacific, large cold air mass. This is a very large region of maritime tropical air out in that region, and the sea is kind of, or the air mass out there is kind of unstable. Okay, we'll take a quick look at the upper level patterns. This is the 500. We're going to shift up to 300 millibars. 300 is what we tend to use on the winter time, and this is showing a 100-knot jet coming on shore there in Oregon, crossing the Rocky Mountains there, and then proceeding on up to the western Great Lakes. And typically between the trough and the downstream ridge, that's where we tend to find the baroclinic system. So that's going to be right in this area there. So that's where we would look for a surface low, somewhere in that general direction. And then if we extend a line away from the jet down to the southwest, that indicates the location of a possible cold front, and then we would expect to find a warm front kind of in that area right there, because it's actually the advection of warm air across and north of that front that actually builds this ridge that we see there. And here's a quick look at the potential temperature chart, showing kind of a, I wouldn't call that a strong gradient, but you can definitely pick out that cold front there. So that's coming down from about Des Moines to Wichita and around Dalhart, Texas. And then the warm front, that's going to be probably located up further north, maybe up around the Great Lakes area, somewhere in there. And then we could pick up a little bit of that Canadian front up in this region here. And out ahead of that, downslope flow, anywhere from Bozeman and western Montana down to Wyoming there. Okay, I think this is probably a good time to check out the chat. And before we do that, I'm going to bring up the satellite picture. Take a look out in the Pacific and see what's going on there. It does look pretty stormy out in that region. Okay, let's see here. We've got David Moore reporting a cloudy day in the Metroplex. Yeah, definitely there. David Moore got the new Scuti Photograph Handbook. Very good. Erica Baker is here. David Moore reporting he's 7 pages in. Excellent. And Jason Boggs been having a couple wildfires in the area there. One south of Childress near Paducah that's burned 3,000 acres. 85% contained. Burl H. received the new book today also. David Moore mentioning he'll be out that way Tuesday. Adam Davis enjoyed a relatively mild day. Sue M. reporting 58 degrees there in Indiana. Yep, bones and knees. Parametric pressure, I really don't know. Yeah, a lot of people do report they get increased joint and bone pain with deterioration of weather, and some say it's barometric pressure, but yeah, I don't really know. That's a good question. Electric Dog is here, and Carl Berghoff. Cthulhu mentioning the joint pain there. David Holcomb joining us. Duane has a question about the difference between relative and absolute vorticity, and the only difference really is the addition of planetary rotation. Relative vorticity is strictly the rotation that we sample on a chart like this, looking at nothing but the wind field, and then absolute vorticity adds the Earth's rotation. So usually when we look at vorticity charts like like this one right here, that's going to be absolute vorticity. And that helps us find upper level shortwaves and stuff like that. That shortwave that we had yesterday, I guess that's moved all the way out to Tennessee. That looks like that system right there. So out ahead of it, that's probably where we have some pressure falls taking place, maybe a little bit of cloudy weather in that area this evening. Erica Baker reporting mostly cloudy in Coffeyville, Kansas, windy about 25-35 miles an hour. Wow. And Adam Davis reporting his parents got a house in Bedford. Okay, great. All right, let's proceed through the rest of the charts here. This will be kind of a quick one because I've got some dinner waiting here. And I think we're going to start with the Southern Plains and look at the changes that we're going to have over the next couple of days. And then from there, we're going to proceed into the long range. So there's that strong southerly flow. Wow, we've got some cold air out to the east. Okay, that's this morning. Started out pretty cold out there towards Shreveport this morning, apparently. So, yeah, we bring heating, and there's what we saw during the day. Temperatures come up to 61 at Shreveport, 55 at DFW with those clouds, and 63 at Amarillo. And there's that downslope flow there. So we're probably starting to develop a little bit of a dry line. I might perhaps be looking in that area for the dry line. And then the front, that's going to be coming down right there. And then the current chart looks like this. So the front approaching Tucumcari and Amarillo there. And I'm assuming the dry line is probably somewhere in this area here. But yeah, the Gulf is wide open all the way back to Florida. So what we're going to see here overnight is the front continuing to push into Dallas, Fort Worth, and through much of Oklahoma. And then we get the warm-up tomorrow. However, that cold front is on its way south. In fact, the winds are already starting to turn around down along the Gulf Coast. And it seems like that's out ahead of the front, too. See here, that looks like the cold front coming up through Dallas around daybreak. And then out ahead of it, we see the winds turning around to the north already. So we're just going to see kind of a gradual, well, one last day of cool weather there. And then it looks like the polar high moves into Texas overnight. And there it is right there. And then for Sunday, I think some of that cold air is probably coming to a halt there around Shreveport and East Texas all the way down to San Antonio. Looks like only 59 for a low at Houston there, compared to 35 there at DFW and 24 at Amarillo. So it's really the temperature that we have to go with for picking out where the front is. We can't just look at the winds. A lot of people might look at those northerly winds and think that the front is all the way out in the Gulf, but really it's the temperature gradient that you have to go with. So that's a good forecast tool to keep in mind. Good piece of forecast advice. And then for Monday, or I'm sorry, for Sunday, looks like the flow is starting to turn around out in Oklahoma, but it looks like a reinforcing shot of cold air coming in from Kansas. And then we'll take a look out of the Midwest real quick. Okay, there's the current chart. It looks like we got a front moving through Iowa and the Kansas City area. And that'll move pretty progressively eastward overnight. And then for tomorrow, looks like we get a pretty strong warm-up behind that front, up to the 50s there. So it's definitely kind of a mild front. And I think it's probably lost its definition a bit. But it appears that if you look up north, we've got this surge of much colder air coming out of Minnesota and the Dakotas. And we're looking at 13 up in Minneapolis to start the day on Sunday. And then we see the development of a baroclinic low around Kansas City during the day there. So it looks like the fronts are set up something like that right there. So it's kind of got the appearance of a little Alberta clipper, maybe a hybrid between of that and a Colorado low. And we're going to see that move probably eastward or northeast, and that should bring some of that cold air southward. Okay, so let's go ahead and head into the GFS. Actually, we'll start with the European model, because that has been pretty aggressive, bringing the cold air south. Okay, this is tomorrow morning. You can definitely see the plateau high right there. And this is the Canadian air starting to move southward. So then for Monday, that cold air from Canada has made it all the way down to Illinois and Kansas. And let's see where it is Tuesday. Actually, that's Sunday there. And then for Tuesday, or I'm sorry, for Monday, we bring a pretty good chunk of that cold Canadian air southward. And then for Tuesday, that's moving. That system has moved all the way through Florida, all the way down to the Gulf Coast. And then we get cyclogenesis up there in the Canadian prairies. And then we're preparing for round 2. There it comes southward on Thursday. And this is a good 1045 millibar high. Moves quickly down into the rest of the U.S. on Friday and Saturday. So that's almost out of the picture. And then here comes shot number 3 for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And we've been talking about this for a few days here. And there it is. Now, around Sunday the 4th, we see low pressure here. This looks like a pretty well-organized Pacific system moving from west to east. And once this is out in the Great Lakes and Midwest, we should see that come back in behind it. And there it is. And this looks like a pretty potent system for the western U.S. and the Rockies and the Great Basin. This is a big 1041 millibar high. And probably on the frame after this, this is the last frame I have for the European model, we should see that spread south and southeastward. So it looks to be probably some cold weather here coming into the 1st and 2nd week of February. At least for the Midwest, we know that for sure. It's a little more in question for this area here, because the GFS does have a somewhat different picture. And let's take a look at that here. Okay, starting out, here's that little plateau high coming in. You can see that's centered there over Colorado. So out ahead of it, there's that flow off the Gulf, a few showers developing. And then we go into Sunday and then Monday. This is where we see that first shot of cold polar air coming out of Canada. And there it comes southward. This is on Monday. And that is basically a 1038 millibar high. So that's going to be moving southeastward there. And then we see the flow start to turn around to the southwest in the plains. There's that downslope flow. And then we have a Pacific front, basically moving east to west through Canada. And once that's gone, here comes some more polar air coming southward. So this next second outbreak will come down late in the week. There it is, almost all the way to Texas on Thursday. And it looks like this is building across the Rockies, probably linking up with that plateau high in that region. And that'll push southward into Texas around Friday and Saturday. And then, of course, along the leading edge, out in this area, looks like a good baroclinic system developing, and some snow from Arkansas up the Ohio River Valley up to Pennsylvania. And then behind it, big 1046 millibar high coming southeastward. So this second shot will be definitely colder. And out ahead of it, good development of that system out in the northeast U.S. And it looks like we're bringing the 540 line all the way south into Mississippi and Alabama. Okay, so by Saturday, there's that high right there. So that's almost out of the picture and down into Florida. And then we are looking at shot number 3 coming down, and this might be even stronger here. Okay, so there's 1040 millibar high coming southeastward. Looks like the GFS is going actually a little bit more mild than the European model on this. And then, let's see here, for the 6th and 7th, this one actually looks a little stronger. This is shot number 4 on the GFS. Looks very stormy out in the western U.S. And then we see that high push southward. So this is definitely a northwest flow pattern here. Upper level flow kind of out of the southwest, bringing a lot of western Canadian air southward, and more chances for winter weather and precip out in the Midwest there. Okay, then we get to the very end, and yeah, this is a big 1050 millibar high, definitely very strong, and it looks like a reinforcing shot coming in for the 10th and 11th. So whichever way you cut it, it definitely looks cold here for, I would say, probably the second week of February here, and that'll probably affect much of the eastern two-thirds of the country. Okay, well, that's probably about it. You know, like I said, this is going to be just kind of a abbreviated webcast here for tonight. I'll take one last look at chat here. Things have been pretty busy, and I've got to get some of my projects on track here. Got another digital atmosphere release to work on. Okay, Ryan Toomey's in late. David Holcomb delivering pizza. Carl Berghoff will try to get a message in to David. Ryan mentioning 75 degrees there in South Florida. Andrew Hotchkiss watching the second shot of cold air very closely. And very good. Okay, well, I'm glad we didn't have any glitches tonight, and we'll see if we can get some faster internet in here next week. Anyway, take care, and we will see you tomorrow.